Alrighty, so today we're going to talk a little bit about making shapes with CSS, and it's actually quite a bit of fun. Mostly we'll be focusing on uh, making border radiuses and so forth. But first I want to go over some of the examples just to help with the demonstration. So first of all, this heart shape, which I thought was really cool. Turns out it's literally just two overlapping shapes, so if we were to move this one, let's say 300 off to the side, we'll notice there's two earbuds that are overlapping. So pretty interesting that you can make some really complicated shapes just with overlapping shapes. So we have our heart, a box, which is gonna be our template for a lot of things. We have a star, which we'll talk a little bit about how that's created. The triangle, which we'll actually be messing with and make our own little triangle with that, a 6-point triangle. And Pac-Man. Now there's a reason I've got Pac-Man here. Other than that he's cool, but we'll also talk about that. So let's go down to our box. So I've got here just a humble box. Now with the box, we can learn some really cool things. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's make this just a bit bigger so we can really get a good look at some of the stuff that we're going to do today. So let's start off with our border radius. Now border radius, because we've only got one number there, is applying to all four sides. Now border radius is read in clockwise notation from this top corner to this one, to this one, to this one, and it will go around like that. So if we specify, like in this one, 4 different coordinates, all 4 of them will be whatever's listed. Now as you notice here, I've got 50 on all 4. That can be represented as simply as that, which creates a circle. But writing the same thing 4 times is the same as writing it 1 time. I wanted to write it like that just to start with, just to make that clear. So let's start off with another thing which was really interesting to me, and I found it a little bit harder to understand at first. So let's add a little division symbol, and let's add 30 pixels, just for fun. So you'll notice here that we get a bit of a weird shape. So on this side we have a shorter curve, a steeper curve, but a shorter curve. And on this side we have our regular curve. So if this was to be eliminated, you'll notice that, watch the top part, it stays in the same point. So what's changed is this part here, this new calculation refers to this side, and the 30% refers to that side. So we can make some really interesting shapes. And similarly, like we have here, it can be applied separately to the different sides. So 30, let's say 100 pixels. And you actually, before I move on, you'll notice it applies to alternate sides. So the 30 pixels and the 30 pixels apply here and here, and the 100 and the 100 apply here and here. If I was to add more, so let's go 50 pixels, and then let's do 60 pixels. We get a real funky looking shape, but we also get individualized corners. So if we do the same thing out here, we got 40%, 26%, just for a random number with a dollar sign apparently, and we can't go over 50%, so let's do 50%. Now we have a nice little wonky shape, but we learn a bit more about corners. So yeah, that's border radius. But so border radius actually has some really cool elements that allow us to do some fun things, which we'll look into in just a moment. So let's move down to our triangle. Now triangles are really fun. Before we move into that, actually let me go back to our star. So the star here is created using 3 shapes. The heart was created using 2. The star is used creating 3. So we have 3 triangles. So here's one triangle. And here's another triangle, and here is another triangle. And to explain that, let's go up here, and let's make them different colors. So let's make this one, let's make that blue. And you'll notice, see, that triangle became blue. And so these are overlapping triangles. Let's make another one green. Huh. Border bottom, green. Weird. You get the idea. They're overlapping shapes, and I'm sure I'm just writing it in the wrong spot. Let's try it here. green. There we go. You can see it. Maybe it was something else. But see that we had blue, and now here's green. That's a better actually example of what we're doing here. So you can see that is the shape. There are 3 overlapping triangles, and this is how they look. So there's that. Okay, so let's move back to our triangle. So we've got our triangle here, and I wanted to create a six-sided diamond, or star, sorry. Six-sided star. Now, I used this one because I wanted to make a point that the direction of the triangle doesn't have to be like the standard triangle. We've got here border right 100 pixels. If I made that left, it would be on that side, or bottom, it's gone because there's top, bottom, and top, so that doesn't work. But border left and border right are like that. But if I made this one bottom, it changes sides. So you can see, you can do some really cool stuff with that. So, and it's just a few changes in words. But yeah, we can't do top and bottom because then it becomes invisible. And you will explain why that is in a little bit. So in order to make our triangle into a star, let's bring out my other triangle, which looks like that. So that's more what you would expect when you see a triangle. That's just kind of what you expect. So in order to make ourselves a star, we would need to have the same triangle flipped over. So pointing down and over the top. There's just 2 triangles. So the way we do that is by using the word after with a colon. So let's bring that in. And it's literally, this one's relative, this one's absolute. It's absolute because it's absolute to this position, and so therefore we just set some basic coordinates to figure out where it sits. So that's how that works. So another thing also to mention, and I had a lot of issues with this when I was messing around, so you need to have content empty for this to work. If I was to comment that out, our triangle disappears. So you need to have content in your after thing for it to work. So let's now move down to my favorite little fellow, being the Pac-Man, or the Batman. And the reason it's a lot of, one of my favorites is obviously because it represents a video game, but also because this will help us to understand the concept I was talking about before with top and bottom. So we've got here border, top, left, right, and bottom. All 4 of them are being used here. Now transparent is what is changed. If I was to take out this shape, we get a whole different shape. So it has to be present for it to work. So we need all 4 borders in order for this shape to work. So sometimes you need to create shapes that are simply transparent. And you notice we did that a little bit with this these triangles. We had left and right were transparent, and the bottom was still there. So that allowed us to have the triangle. So let's have a look here what happens if, for example, I make the top transparent. So if I make the top transparent, we have a semicircle. Now, some cool things you can do with that is you could perhaps create a lemon slice. Now, luckily for me, I thought of that ahead of time, and so I created an overlapping little orange. So I just kind of threw a color on there. Let's just mess around with it so maybe you can see it better. But you see that, you know, you can have some real fun with it. Like you can create some overlapping shapes that let me copy another color. This might make it a little easier to see. There we go. It's a bit more orange. More of an orange, but anyway, you get the idea. So you can create some custom objects or shapes using CSS. You know, I've just created a slice here, and maybe you could add a few different shapes on there that just are part of the shape. And if they're part of the shape, you can essentially animate that too. So you can, you know, you can do some cool things with that and make it animated, and you wouldn't have any images to import, and there's just some cool stuff you can do with that. So anyway, that's all. That was basically all I wanted to talk about. Hope this has been informative and useful. So yeah, let me bring my Pac-Man back before I close it up, because that's important. Anyway, so thanks for watching, and I hope this has been helpful. Alright, see ya.